I think great architecture creates a personal response or like an emotional response, a connection. And for me, not every building has to bring joy, but it has to connect to an emotion.
Hello and welcome to the Architecture Beyond podcast. Today, we are greeted by guest Chad Polk, president of CDP Architecture, as well as becoming president for AIA Tennessee. Thank you so much for joining us, Chad.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brandon. I appreciate you inviting me to be on your podcast.
Thank you, thank you. And I should say, Chad, I think that's a unique part of your story as well. Like, I guess, could you start by just telling what inspires you about architecture? Being in the industry, what makes it tick for you?
Yeah, so I'd say there's a lot. When you're sort of growing up as a kid, you don't really understand the things that sort of influence you in terms of your spatial environment, the house that you live in, the buildings that you visit as you sort of grow up. But um, having some of that perspective now, looking back, I can see where a lot of those spaces that I would visit often, with family and friends, et cetera, really shaped an appreciation for design and sort of the built environment, even nature for that matter, and how I'd want to try to bring that nature inside in a lot of ways and connect our buildings to the surroundings and to the outside. So I think that's something that inspires me, today to try to think back of those spaces that are really um, important that brought me joy as even a child or even as an adult, having had the opportunity to study abroad, seeing some of the vast, amazing architecture
Well, that,
overseas.
I guess, could you share that how you got there and how that influenced you in architecture?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess if you want to go sort of, I'm going to start way back real quick. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
a lot of people are like, well, why did you become an architect, or why did you want to go into architecture? Um, I think growing up, a lot of people, family members thought I'd be an attorney, a lawyer. I guess I like to argue a lot or something. But I think it also was an awareness of different perspectives of things. Yeah, so I grew up a kid in a kind of a middle-sized town up in western Kentucky, Hopkinsville, Kentucky, and then moved out more to the rural areas of Kentucky in Todd County, which was, went from a population of around 30,000 to a little town of about 500. And so that kind of changed a lot of perspective for me. Um, but my grandmother was an artist, and my mom was kind of an artist as well. And then my dad was an accountant, so very analytical and math side of the brain. And I think I had a lot of those skills as well, but I was also always drawing and painting and doing things like that. Every time I go over to my grandparents' house, we would break out watercolors and that sort of thing. I think that influenced me a lot on the creative side, and then on the more analytical side, being able to, uh, I guess, understand a lot of those natural sciences of physics and geometry, math. I love math, and so as I was in middle school, a lot of the teachers that I spoke with said, you ought to really look into architecture because it marries a lot of the skills that you already have. And so I was always interested in that. Just I grew up a kid in the '70s, and the Brady Bunch was a cool show that we watched. Mike Brady was an architect and had a cool house. We actually had a cabin out at the lake that was an A-frame with a spiral staircase, and that we shared with a couple different families. And those types of spaces inspired me as well. And so um, I'm like, yeah, this could be a pretty cool profession. And then I went to a career day at my middle school, and they talked about how many years of school you're going to have to do after you graduate high school and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know, maybe I'm not going to do that because I don't want to go to school forever. But then once I got into high school, and some of my teachers, one of my teachers in particular, Miss Barnes, was really, she was a history teacher and loved architecture and Frank Lloyd Wright. She loved Frank Lloyd Wright and kind of introduced us to that. And she was encouraging on the architecture side. So I applied and entered the admissions exam for the University of Kentucky. They had an exam you had to do, an all-day thing. It was a pretty tough admissions process, and ended up scoring very well on that, and made it in as an incoming freshman, and kind of the rest is history there.
Beautiful. That's also lovely to see the inspiration, from both sides, because actually math and art is like architecture marries the two. I guess, what are some of the keystone moments that impacted you in architecture? If it's like buildings, I know you said that A-frame, and it's like, yes, I've seen. Could you go into some of those moments?
There are lots of spaces like that. We were talking earlier about just the reflection and of life experience over time, and how those have influenced my spatial awareness of things unconsciously. Basically, I grew up playing in a lot of tobacco barns out on my grandparents' farm, and the light quality that would come through those spaces, and just kind of the unique structures that they were, and seeing those things. Of course, at the time, you're not really even thinking about it, but they leave a memory in your soul, almost an imprint, if you will, that impacts the way you kind of see things. Once you're able, especially in architecture school, you start to reflect back on some of those things, that things are important, that you kind of see outside of what the normal everyday person thinks about architecture. There's a saying that the AIA had for a while was look up.
I look up,
It was
yeah.
you remember that, and if you see a bunch of architects, we're always looking up, like this. Most people are just kind of focused here at the sidewalk and, see things peripheral, but, we see things in a little different ways. And now in architecture school, we were able to kind of look back on those things and see those things that made those lasting impressions. One thing too, started to talk about earlier also, is having the ability to study abroad. Got to study in Venice, Italy, and live there, and just the play of the light and shadows in the spaces that are created with internal campos and winding streets and hidden alleyways, and then the water, the reflection on the buildings. There's so many things at play
Thousands
there.
of years and the Renaissance as well. That's
Absolutely. And just the amazing, just grand gesture to architecture. It just shows the importance that architecture plays on the everyday for people in that society. It's a little different here in just how we interact with it from a personal scale, and walking through a city like that. Nashville is a little bit different. There are spaces that are more engaging at the pedestrian level, but I think there's just some qualities of that we want to, I guess, exploit and interject on the projects that we work on.
I guess you have a wealth of experience. How would you define good architecture now, sort of, and is it different from when you sort of started school? Like, how has it changed?
Man, that's a great question. I think great architecture creates a personal response, or like an emotional response, a connection um, to you internally, that just somehow, our motto, as you know, here at CDP Architecture, is designing joy. And for me, not every building has to bring joy, but it has to connect to an emotion. The emotion we like to connect to is joy, because there needs to be more joy in the world, in my opinion. But
Absolutely.
certain buildings maybe aren't. They may want to evoke another emotion, like the Holocaust Museum. That's not about evoking joy. It's about empathy for the people that suffered there, and understanding, the way the placement of the displays are made, where you have to bow your head to read them. There's some reverence there that it connects more than just sort of physically, but it's almost like a spiritual connection, an internal emotional connection. Those are the types of spaces that I think are great architecture, like the cathedrals we were talking about over in Europe. Those spaces are so grand, it's hard not to connect emotionally and spiritually and internally to those types of spaces, to understand the importance of the role that faith plays, in the lives of people that that seek out something beyond themselves.
That's true, and I think definitely that's some of the sort of in experiencing and learning about some of the work you've done with CDP. It's like that's something that has to be talked about, and clients, when they talk about it, it's like is that success. I guess what's something important about architecture, and so just to get like a perspective of you, that what is something important about architecture that others may not know or understand, especially nowadays where you can see it all over
Yeah,
Instagram, but
I,
or
for me personally, we get people that call sometimes. They're like, "Yeah, I've got this plan, and can you just kind of make it work on our site, and can you just review it?" And like, okay, first of all, we don't start with the plan. We start with the site, and the site informs everything: where it is, how it's going to sit there, your access to it, the way the wind moves through the site, the way the sun moves across the site, the way you're going to access it in and out. There's so many things at the site, its actual location, how that informs the design. Whether it's a downtown urban street, the context of the buildings around it, the corner condition, the heights of buildings, the materials, like there's so many things. You can't just say, I'm just going to design this building with no site at
mm-hmm.
all. And we have clients that are like, yeah, we want to start doing this, but we don't have the site yet. Like, well, how do we start? We can start with a program, and we can start with kind of deciding what things are important in terms of what the client wants to have in the building. But what the building is or looks like in a lot of ways, or the way it's laid out, it's really hard to even fathom that without knowing a lot of other connected pieces. I don't think a lot of people understand that.
Yeah, yeah. In the day and age where you can actually just buy a building and put it somewhere, people don't know the difference to come to architect.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
um one thing I've also in learning and knowing about CDP is about the connection of interiors. Why is interiors so important in architecture? Uh,
Yeah, so we've recently brought on a full interior design studio. We feel like, for one, having a dedicated group of staff that are, devoted towards that specific discipline, if you will, for design of the interior spaces and knowledge of those materials and how they're going to perform, I think is really important. What we used to do in a lot of cases, as architects, we're sort of trained on that as well, to do interior architecture. But we also do a lot of single-family residential, high-end custom residential projects. And oftentimes, before we had more, females in the office. Now we have more, I think, more females than we have males in the office. And, there wasn't as much of a trust from oftentimes the wives of the families we were designing homes for, that they may not have trusted the guys in the office to have the sensibility to design the right materials and make the right selections. And so now with the dedicated staff, I think it brings a comfort level, for one, to our clients, that we have the sensibilities um, to address the needs of both the wife and the husband and the family, through those aspects. And that's kind of an old-timey way of thinking of things in some ways, but in a lot of ways it's reality. But you asked the importance of architect or interiors. For us, I think also we want to tie a very tight string between the design of the building and the interior design as well, that it's all telling the same story, that it's all integrated into the whole purpose or the story of why we're doing what we're doing. So everything ties back to a specific reason or theme or the purpose of the project. And by having that staff integrated into our team, we're able to manage that more than, in a lot of cases where if we weren't doing the interior design and we were just in the architecture, a lot of times, and this has kind of happened on some projects in the past where we did the architecture and then another interior designer was hired to do the interiors part. And there may have been a little disconnect between what our initial concepts or goals were and what the final product ended up being. And we like to have that sort of all in a little more control, but also with the end goal of the client in mind. And that's always the thing. We never force style or design onto our clients. They're an integral part of the design process. We want to understand them, in some cases, what their desires are from a design perspective, maybe more than they understand themselves. It's through a series of questions and answers and exploration that we try to really find out what they really like and why they like it, that they didn't maybe even understand why they liked something more than another thing, but you can really dive in and get a sense of that, and then pull out those special situations and those special opportunities, and integrate them into the design. And that's when it really starts to sing,
Yeah, yeah. And that's something a lot of architects can learn as well, because I think a lot of architects, either they're super separated or think it less, but the focus and attention of it. That was very helpful, sort of seeing that take on interiors and just the importance, because also, all those styles, like an architect, even in terms of choosing an exterior paint, like there's always a craft to it. It's like architects have somehow taken a little bit more of the contractor side and forgotten the art side, whereas it seems like it's part of what we do. We're artists as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think those decisions, we have, I think, as the architect and the interior design team, we have a vision for what the end product should be. And that's why, our clients hire us as an expert to be able to inform them or provide at least design options for them to review. We love to have their input because, as I often say, I'm not the one that's going to be living here or working here every day. We want our clients to really feel comfortable with the final decisions. We're never going to force a decision or a style or a color palette or something on them. We're going to get full buy-in, but we also know what we like and we know what's going to work with the materials that we've got selected, etc. So.
This episode of Architecture Beyond is all about designing joy and leading with purpose in the world of architecture. We're joined by Chad Polk, founder and president of CDP Architecture, as he shares his origins and some of his contributions to the built environment with creativity and business savvy. Founded by Chad D. Polk in 2007, CDP Architecture focuses on giving you a personalized experience through thoughtful and creative design. Whether you're planning a community gathering space or your next home, the CDP approach combines practical vision with artistic care so your space delivers lasting value and joy. Visit cdparchitecture.com to explore their projects and click Contact Us to start the conversation about your next design. There's a unique vision you have about pre-design, and I'll let you introduce that because it made so much sense to me that a lot of architects don't understand.
Yeah, well, I'm sure others have dealt with this in different ways, for certain. But we used to get a lot of clients that would come in and just want to dive right into the design right into, fleshing out the schematics, getting a full design solution at the beginning without really understanding what their true budget was and or what the site would even allow them to do. And so oftentimes we need, there's certain things that are prerequisites for a project. One is if it's going to be a new build and or an addition, it doesn't matter. On a site, if we're creating a new footprint at all, we need a survey. We need a survey of that site so we understand. There's so many things that we need to understand, frankly. Are there any easements or setbacks or stormwater issues or floodways? There's so many things that could impact the layout or design of anything that touches the ground. And so until we have that information, it's really hard. We're just sort of shooting in the dark. We might get it right most of the time, probably just through our insight, but every now and then, we were working on one project, and this is kind of where a lot of this started from. We were working on this one project, and the owner's like, oh yeah, our property goes straight back here. We've got the setback on the side, so we can really just go straight off this corner and back and connect over. And we've got all this room in the back. And like, well, okay, I mean, it appears to be that's probably right. And then, so we did the addition. It was an addition off the back side, and we drew it all out. And then finally we get the survey back. Well, the survey shows the property line is actually at a diagonal, and the back corner of the house was almost right on the property line already, and it went straight diagonal, like their lot was like a pie shape. And so the whole area where we'd done this addition, it was, off even the side of the property. And so it's like, or I don't know if it was off the property, but it was definitely well within the setbacks. So we're like, well, we've gone through all this. We told you we needed that up front. You wanted to push it. You told it was all, open all the way back, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's not the case. And now we've wasted a bunch of time because we got down, so far along till we're waiting on that information, and nobody's happy. We're not happy. We spent a bunch of extra time and fee, and then the client spent money on, some of that time as well. And then we've got to start over, and they're not happy because they didn't get what they wanted. And are we even doing the project? All this stuff. So anyway, we try to avoid that. And that's few and far between, but at the same time, once is too many times for that to happen. So what we've started doing is what we call a pre-design service package. And what we do is we study all the particulars of the site. One other thing I'll add to that. Let's say, regardless of if there's a site constraint, say the client's like, well, we really don't know what our budget is. We know we want this, this, and this, and we want it designed like this, and let's design it, and then we'll figure out what it's going to cost. And we do a design, and we've done this, this happened before we would do the pre-design service package, what we call PDSP. But we go into the design, and it actually would fit on the site, et cetera. Do this beautiful design, and the clients absolutely loved it, right? They're like, oh, this is exactly what we want. It's got all the spaces that we talked about, and like it's, the sizes, everything's great. And then we'd send it out to bid, and this is at the end of schematic design. So the end of the first phase. So we haven't gone through full design or through full construction documents, but we've still gone through 30 to 40% of our fee to this point to get a full design, right? So we get the design, we get it, we send it out, get pricing, and the pricing comes back. And remember, this is a client that's like, well, we don't really have a budget. We just know what we want, right? And so then we get the number back, and they're like, oh, that's 2 times what our budget is. Like, you said you didn't have a budget, It's like everybody's got a budget, okay? Everybody, well, most folks have a budget. And so, like, you've got to share that information up front, first of all. I think, I'm not sure what they think. Oftentimes, our fee is tied to the construction cost. And so I think they're trying to see how they can keep our fee low and still get everything they want. But the problem is they had the design they wanted, and then it cost twice as much as what they they were hoping it would. And now they're like, we can't even do this project. This is more than we thought. Like, well, if you share all that, we can work together towards an end goal. And everybody's happy. Nobody's upset again. Nobody likes that. And so we thought we were doing exactly what you wanted because you loved it the whole way, right? And now you're mad because we gave you exactly what you asked for. So it's never a great situation. So we started requiring this PDSP, and I started to get into it. We study the site, what the site restrictions are, any of those setback issues, if there are any flood issues on there, if there are any easements, like all that information we require up front. We start with the survey. We look at the zoning. We look at any HOA issues, any neighborhood restrictions, et cetera, et cetera. Anything that could affect our design, we put in a document that says, okay, once we move forward in full design, these are the elements that we have to address. The other thing we start to do in that pre-design service package is we understand exactly the spaces that the client wants. If there's specialty features and items, be it a sauna, steam showers, golf simulator, all these extra things, right? And so we put line items down. We create a budget, a spreadsheet. We put sizes allocated to each of these rooms. We don't do any design. We'll do some bubble diagrams that say, okay, you want the kitchen connected to the great room, and you want the great room connected to an outdoor, living covered space, and then you want this next to that. Like there's an adjacency, but they're just blobs of space, right? And they're relative to the size, so we can get an idea of what the flow is going to be once we get into the design. And so this comes to a series of questions that we ask, how the people are going to live. It becomes super customized to exactly the needs of the client. And all of this we do for a fixed fee up front. Everybody knows what the cost is for us to do this, provide this service. And at the end of it, we've got an itemized list of all the spaces, and then we do it in a, what do we call it? It's not necessarily good, better, best. It's standard, premium, and luxury. Yeah, are the three kind of price points, right?
I see the great benefit to that because I think a lot of architects love the design part more, and that's why it's easy for us, when clients come, even the PSP to be like spreadsheets and words. It's like it's harder for an architect, but at the same time,
well,
it's something
we do
needed.
create some fun diagrams with it too, that are useful. I mean, they're not just to be pretty pictures. They're very useful and informative of how we're going to proceed once we get into that part of the project. They define what's important to the client as well, because that's the whole idea of this. But the biggest part, again, are what can we build, what are our size restrictions, et cetera, or even in some cases size minimums on certain sites. Are there septic issues? There's always septic issues, it seems like, on a lot of these big new pieces of property that we're working on. The other thing is with the budget, building out that budget lets us know, hey, standard, premium, and luxury, these are your three variables that we can put, cost per square foot. And each of those spaces gets its own kind of cost per square foot, because a big great room may be less per square foot than obviously the kitchen area and or the master bathroom area, so those get allocated certain cost per square footage, so you can see what the true cost of each of those rooms is and the size relative to the cost. So if you want to affect the overall budget, you can do it by eliminating certain spaces, or you can eliminate or go to a lesser quality in a certain room. It's kind of this checklist of ways for them to impact the cost. We're not doing it. We're not driving it. We're just trying to educate and highlight, here's where your costs are located in this project.
It's transparency to the owner, and that's super helpful because it's like they might think they know it, but it's like it's putting that before them. That's
Well, something I always really like is clear is kind. if we're clear, we're open up front about the process and how these costs are derived, and it's open, then we're actually doing you a service and being kind to try to show you here's what your expectations should be.
Yeah. It
And
would be helpful if other design professionals also like around the, because yeah, I think that's even issue. Like if people hire a civil or an engineer or a contractor, it's like, are they as transparent as that? That's really helpful.
yeah, I mean, it would be nice if it was. I mean, we're trying to run a business. We want to make profit. We're not you know we're not the cheapest folks in town, and we're probably not the most expensive folks in town. But at the same time, we know there's a lot of value in the experience that we have, and the creativity we have, the staff that we have, the types of people. We're fair, um, just honest, truthful, and kind, and those are like key things for us. We're going to do the right thing, even if it's the hard thing. I mean, it's just how we're built, what our DNA is, and
That's really helpful. I did want to definitely give some time for your thoughts on AIA. It's as now serving and being part of it. I guess could you share your experience with AIA and its importance for the architecture industry?
yeah. So AIA, I've been involved in AIA since I was in school. I was one that always wanted to kind of connect to the profession, even when I was in school, thinking ahead of, how do I make sure I get a get a job once I get out of this thing, and I actually can maybe get something built, because there were a lot of folks in architecture school and even some professors that were teaching that had never built or had any of their projects, actually realized, and so. I really got attracted to the AIA through that, because it was the professional organization for practicing architects. AIAS was something we had at the University of Kentucky. I was able to go to uh, the AIAS forum at the time that year. I forget exactly which year it was, but it was the first international
Wow.
forum that they had. It was a combination with Ryerson in Toronto and the University of Buffalo. And so we went up and had the big conference up there, and went over into Toronto as well. And then,
Nice.
seeing some of those schools, I'm like, Kentucky, the University of Kentucky, I mean, not no slam against anybody that went to either of those schools, but I'm like, we can compete with these guys. And why doesn't Forum come to Kentucky? We've got a lot to showcase here. So we actually put a group together, and or at least brought the idea that, hey, we can compete on this stage. And
Mm.
so a group after me really kind of put that together. And after I graduated, they actually brought Forum to the University of
Wow.
Kentucky. So it's really cool.
That's awesome.
And then as soon as I graduated and came to Nashville, I got involved in our local Young Architects Forum group, which was a group of young professionals, mostly interns, what we called ourselves at the time. When we first graduated school, that would kind of get together, and basically, the more time you mention the word beer, the more people came to those events, and we go and just hang out and talk about stuff, or talk about the ARE. We used to have study groups for the ARE, the licensing exam, and so that was another reason to kind of get involved. So through that, I chaired one of the committees. I did a tour committee, which got me connected to a lot of different firms in town, and we would go tour some cool projects that were happening. I remember we toured the new Country Music Hall of Fame that was under construction back then. I mean, we toured all kinds of cool buildings. And then through that involvement, I got asked to serve as the local chapter board as the first associate director for AIA Middle Tennessee. Well, about the same time, that's when the associate position on AIA was coming to be, and they wanted board positions on both the state and local boards. And so the state didn't have a person either. And since the state is kind of founded here in Nashville, they're like, well, Chad, do you want to do the state board at the same time you're doing the local board? I'm like, well,
Wow.
sure, why not? And
Okay.
so I was the first ever associate board member, AIA associate member on the board for AIA Middle Tennessee and AIA Tennessee. And
Mm.
so I served in that role for several years and served on a national advisory board for the Young Architects Forum. Kind of through that, I was at first the regional liaison. We used to have regional groups for the Gulf States region. I teamed up and partnered with different regional liaisons from different or AIA associate members from across the different states within our region, and served on the national level for that. And then was also, after serving as a liaison, I served as one of the advisory committee members as the communication director for the Young Architects Forum. It was a 7-person advisory committee and the executive committee for that. So that was cool. That really kind of got me connected with AIA, and I made friends all across the country through that because people served from Washington State to Connecticut, Texas, and just all across Louisiana, all over. So I had friends all across the country that were kind of similar age and similar interest, and was able to actually work with some of those folks as well on projects. And so AIA has been great to me. Having that involvement has connected me with a lot of different
Well,
folks.
that's and now serving, in a greater position, you've also served as a before being licensed, and now as a firm owner, I guess. Um, I guess and you're still involved, so I think that shows a testament that you just believe in service, or like what? How do you say that? Because yeah, some architects don't even know that what's available for AIA.
Yeah, and I think that's part of my mission, if you will, for serving is trying to help others navigate this crazy profession, and how we can better serve our members through uh, just the things we have to offer. A lot of people are like, well, what does the AIA do? And like, man, you have no idea all the background stuff that's going on that people should appreciate more, especially as it relates to legislation. There's so many people every day wanting to take and dilute what our license means,
Mm.
and take away even our need for existence, if you will. So we're out there fighting. We have lobbyists that serve the needs of our profession on the Hill, both at the federal level and at the state level. They're looking out for issues that are going to relate and or disrupt potentially the profession of architecture. So, without that, we'd probably all be working for contractors and or
Wow.
developers or other folks, and people just don't even appreciate all that work that's being done behind the scenes. Or we'd all be, painting yellow stripes on steps in federal
There
buildings.
you
Like,
go.
there's so many different little things that we fight against on a yearly basis that come up. People can present a bill at a whim for just changing zoning or changing regulations that have an impact on the health, safety, and welfare of the general public. And so this is a way to serve our greater community, not just our profession of architects, but also a passion as a small firm owner too. Understanding more about the business of architecture is really a passion of mine now as well. When I first started my firm, I didn't know what I knew about architecture, and I knew how basically it was set up to, we could charge for our time percentage of construction or whatever. And you work against that time and you can invoice it and do good work. And then get out in the real world and like, oh man, how am I going to do all this by myself and still get the work done and go to meetings? So I was like killing myself working, pulling 3 all-nighters a week for the first several months. It's just like killing me. There's like no way you can do this. So anyway, just learning more about how to set up the business and getting those things figured out has paid a lot of dividends. And I'd like to be able to express that knowledge and help others be able to start off maybe better than I did out of the gate.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, also from your experience, also just, with the construction industry, what are some insights that I guess you can sort of share, sort of, that are really going to affect our design industry or that can help us going forward?
well, as you know, AI is upon us as well. And,
Yes.
I think there's really ways to embrace AI as a tool to use internally. I saw a neat thing I'm sure it's on Instagram here recently about, are we concerned as architects that AI is going to replace us? And then you look at some of the images and,
But can AI
you
build
know,
does can AI build a building? That's
no,
a
exactly. And well, not only that, but let's say it could, right? But can AI work with a client that wants to change their mind and like have an emotional connection to something, like get into the reasons why they want to, like they cannot connect on that human side. It's impossible. And so I think we always have a place. We will always have a place in terms of just general true design that really speaks to a person's individual needs and the emotional needs of our clients, whether that's from a corporate standpoint or a single family residential standpoint. But those are things to consider of how we utilize those tools to best serve the needs of others. Again, for us, the designing joy is a huge thing, and for me, it's all about service. And it's why I feel like I was put here on the planet, is to be of service to others. And I feel like the gifts that I've been given are the ones of design and creativity, and so I want to share those talents and gifts that I feel like God has blessed me with for some reason, right? And so I've found that hey, I've got something I can share in that regard, and bring more joy to other folks. So.
But there's some beautiful projects that you've created both the CDP and before, and definitely there are projects that you also have to come. I guess could you share about a dream project that's on your heart for you that maybe in the works, but that you'd love to complete?
What did you say? Share what type of project?
Share a dream project, something
Oh,
that
a
maybe,
dream
yeah.
project.
So I know a lot of architects,
Um,
they have a dream.
I don't know if I want to share it yet, but
Okay.
we have a couple, potential opportunities, you know, that are out there, and we'll see if some come around or not too. We've got one potential project that we've done some preliminary work with. It's in the Caribbean on an island, and it's a multi-phase project that would um, just be absolutely amazing. We're hoping that comes to be, and really to serve the needs of this family, because they have just the desire to do something really amazing and lasting for their family legacy for years, and to be able to help them accomplish that is awesome. And hell, it won't look bad on our website either. So, that would be amazing. I mean, there's lots of things. I love to fish. I used to love to hunt a lot more, but still do some dove hunting and that sort of thing. But we've got the opportunity to potentially work on um, uh, like a fish camp type of project with a lodge for people that are going to do some bass fishing, and that's a passion of mine. So those kinds of things are always fun, that really connect to something I enjoy. But I guess you would often hear, what's your favorite project, the next one.
There you
Because
go.
we just never know what's going to come in the door. There's so many cool opportunities that are out there, and we just look to help people achieve their goals and their dreams. We've got this amazing the tree lofts project that we've done for our client there, that they had a vision. They've got this amazing site on the side of a bluff with views down the valley, and we've been able to do some really creative little cabins there. And so those are just so fun, but they've really turned out great for the owner. They're making great money off of using those for Airbnb rentals,
It's
and
yeah,
we
it's a
love that.
destination. Yeah,
We love that. We love
it's
the
on my
success of
list.
our
Yeah,
clients, and
yeah.
that's what we live for.
That's beautiful. I guess just sort of last sort of before sort of ending, and this has been a great interview. Could you share some parting words maybe to architects who are maybe leaving school and figuring out if they want to do something, with be a big firm or small firm or residential, or do they want to start doing hotels, or what is your advice?
Well, I'll give an experience share, if you will. I'm a member of the EO, which is Entrepreneur Organization, and we have these little groups called forums, and it's all different um, business owners, but they're all different types of businesses. So I'm in a group of 6 of us, and each of us owns a different type of service type of business. And instead of giving advice, we give experience shares. That's kind of the format of our group. An experience share for me, when I graduated, I went to work initially for kind of a small firm, but we were doing a lot of franchise cookie cutter type of work. And for me, it did not connect to my passion, right? I wanted to design um, unique buildings that had some design element to them, something that was inspiring and something that would touch people in a certain way, and so franchise restaurants where you're just turning on and off layers just didn't quite do it for me. So I worked there for about 3 months, and I'm like, I can't do this. This is not working. So I sought out other opportunity. I actually got a call right at that same time from a firm that I had looked at previously, and they're like, "Well, hey, we finally got this position over. We'd love for you to come." And that was at Gresham Smith, and that was a large firm. Learned a lot of great things at that firm. It was again, a big corporate at the time, not as big as it is now. Learned a lot about systems and standards and quality and practice, and got to work on a really unique project. It's about a $60 million project. This was back in the early '90s, and or mid to late '90s, and at the time, that's a big project. And it was like 3 or 4 of us working on that. And the one thing I learned from that too is it doesn't take 40 people to do a big project like that. It takes
Mm,
just 2 or 3 people was the main architectural team. Of course, we had interior design group as well that worked on it, and then engineers, of course. But it really gave me kind of a sense of, especially when I started my own firm, that hey, we can do a whole lot with a little in
mm.
terms of number of folks. But there's also the perception that a big firm, you got to have a big firm like that to do big projects like that. So anyway, I wasn't, after a while, after that project was over, I was on a team, a bigger team on a big healthcare um, project, and I didn't feel like I was getting the experience that I needed just for me personally where I wanted to go. And so I ended up getting another opportunity, another call out of the blue for another firm that was looking for somebody. And I had a friend over there, and went over to Gobble Hayes Partners. And that's when I really got to sink my teeth into designing. At the time they were kind of a mid-sized firm. I think there were maybe 6 or 8 of us, in the architecture department. And then I really got to do things from the very concept design idea, even from the interview all the way through construction. So really got an opportunity to learn the full process of a project, and doing it all, drawing and designing and meeting with clients and et cetera. And so again, that gave me the confidence to kind of move in to the next stage. So I guess the experience share is, I think that all paid some dividends for me in terms of where I am today, in understanding some of the processes and the standards, et cetera, that are important, while also being able to learn, get out in the field, in the construction, doing all phases of the design, try to get as much varied experience as possible, as early as possible. And the more you can get out in the field and see stuff under construction, the better a designer you're going to be, because you see what the contractors are struggling with in the field based on your design. Like, what are the things that are issues to them that you want to make it? We're not here to make contractors' lives easy, but at the same time, we want it to be, where we're all achieving the same goal and we're all on the same page of how things can be done and what's the most efficient way to do that. Because at the end of the day, we're stewards of our clients' money and the dollars that they're spending, and we're trying to achieve a certain either detail or look or end result. And if we're all working together as a team, we're going to achieve that. I often say, construction or building a building is a team sport. Every player has to have the same goal of winning, right? And what winning looks like. And so if you're on the same page with that, then, you're going to do some really, really good work together. But if one person's just in it for themselves, if you've played any sports, you've probably played on a team where there's this one guy or one teammate that just wants to be a ball hog or whatever. Well, you're not going to go very far with that kind of player. If you got a real cohesive team, then you can win a championship.
Wow. Awesome. And thank you so much for those insights. I guess the final thing is, where can people find out more about you, Chad, and what you're doing next?
Yeah, so check out our Instagram as our first plug for. It's just at CDP Architecture. We post probably more of our more current stuff there. A lot of times I'm seeing that we're doing more stories than full post. Once we get final photography, we're trying to make it a little more sort of streamed to some final things that we're doing. But at the same time, it's fun. You'll see some neat, current work that we're working on there. Also, you can check out our website. It's www.cdparchitecture.com. And we're in the process of sort of revamping that too. There may be some updates to that coming very soon. Those are the main things. Just swing by. We're over here just south of Zanies and right across the street from Groom Guitar.
Heart of Nashville. Yeah.
Yeah, great little section of Nashville off 8th Avenue, and we love our location. It's very convenient. So if you're in the neighborhood, come see us.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chad. And thanks so much to the audience. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Again, watch it again. Check out the links. There will also be links in the bio to learn more about Chad and the work of CDP Architecture in the links. Thanks so much. This episode of Architecture Beyond is all about designing joy and leading with purpose in the world of architecture. We're joined by Chad Polk, founder and president of CDP Architecture, as he shares his origins and some of his contributions to the built environment with creativity and business savvy. Founded by Chad D. Polk in 2007, CDP Architecture focuses on giving you a personalized experience through thoughtful and creative design. Whether you're planning a community, gathering space, or your next home, the CDP approach combines practical vision with artistic care so your space delivers lasting value and joy. Visit cdparchitecture.com to explore their projects and click Contact Us to start the conversation about your next design.